Welcome to Masters of Self University podcast, your highest source of sacred truths and universal wisdom. Hello, beautiful souls. I'm Rachel Fiori, mystic, spiritual teacher, psychic healer, and founder of Masters of Self University. Join our journey of soul transformation as we deep dive into this latest episode.
Hello, everyone. Before Rachel gets started with today's episode, I just want to make you aware that we are now accepting applications for our Mystical Life Coach certification starting in the second week of January 2024. That's in less than 2 months away from us right now. So if you are interested in doing what myself, what Ellie, and all our amazing other Mystical Life Coaches do, if you're interested in becoming a coach, earning the certification, follow the link below, fill out the application, and jump on a quick consultation with me. I'll see you in another episode. Thanks.
Hello, mystical beings. Welcome to Masters of Self University podcast. I'm Rachel Fiori, your host for this episode. So, why men objectify women is something that a lot of people talk about. It is a serious problem in our world culture, right? And I want to offer to you a much deeper reason than what a lot of people talk about. So first we have to understand, what does it truly mean to objectify? That program of objectification is a dehumanization program. It's a dehumanizing program. Okay, so it's an aspect of dehumanization. It means I objectify you because I don't value you. I don't see you as a divine being. I don't acknowledge your humanness at all. I objectify you. Sexual objectification, of course, is the most common way that women are objectified and dehumanized. But it is not, objectification or dehumanization does not ever have to be in a sexual way, right? Think about this. Violence to women, oftentimes men don't react to. They don't stand up as protectors. They don't stop the violence. They don't try to get in the way. It is literally, statistically, women way more often than men that stand up to actually get in the way or try to help or protect another woman. It's actually women that do that way more compared to men. Men are often bystanders of when they see a man objectifying, harassing, harming, or even violently attacking a woman. Men are more often bystanders compared to women. Women are more often the ones that stand up and put themselves in harm's way to protect another woman, a woman that they think is in danger or being attacked or whatever it is. Look up the statistics on that, you guys, because that is the truth. I don't waste my time with shit that isn't the truth. And because of that, we have to go deeper in understanding the programs that have been conditioned into men and women, both. But this is why, a deeper reason why men actually objectify and therefore dehumanize women. And yeah, your surface level programs, of course, are, well, they believe they're superior to you. They believe that you're not equal to them, right? So they lack the way of equality. They lack the way of honoring. You're not going to honor another being that you don't even see as being human. You see them as an object. You see them as a thing that you can do whatever you want to. You see them as, some see them as a slave. You're here to be subservient, to serve me. Those extreme programs exist. Doesn't exist in all the people listening to this podcast by any means. But as a collective, that is there. Those energies, those programs exist, right? But I want you to understand why, even if you're not, as a man, in an extreme form of those programs anymore, or currently, or, you don't show up that way in the world or with women, that you may still objectify in a lot of ways. What's one way that we dehumanize or objectify is when your friends, your buddies are being disrespectful, when they are dehumanizing in the way they talk about a woman, okay? Which of course happens a lot. And then we're left with, well, I'm really I'm healing, I'm elevating, I am connecting to my own divinity, and as a divine being, you don't talk about other humans or other beings in that way. You don't treat them that way. You don't talk trash about them. You don't dehumanize them. Even when you're talking about them, they're not objects. So some of my clients, for example, will struggle sometimes when they're going through this transition of, I am connected to my divinity, I'm healing myself, I'm elevating out of all those old programs, and then, oh crap, I'm sitting here with a buddy of mine just, you know, cheating and talking about the woman he's cheating with, and she's a dirty hoe, and I blah 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 this and blah 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 that, and but yeah, she's my side chick, and whatever. It's the way that they're dehumanizing and even talking about, not to mention the way that that person is abusing the woman. But in the discussion in this example, the man who's actually elevating is, oh my gosh, like, I didn't cross my mind before, but that was just a normal conversation and I was so uncomfortable and I didn't know how to handle it. Like, because I teach, like, you shouldn't have judgment. That just shows that you're judgmental, that you're actually running a superiority program in that moment, right? Even when somebody, what they're doing is, there's nothing about what they're doing that's okay. They're dehumanizing, they're objectifying, they're using, they're lying to, they're manipulating, they can spread STDs, the whole thing. You're causing harm. So it's not like what they're doing is okay. And when you're a divine person, you're passive and you just let everybody do whatever the fuck they want. No, that is the old world. A divine being has zero tolerance policy on this kind of stuff. Zero tolerance for yourself and for everyone else. We, as a collective of oneness consciousness, we don't tolerate any being being abused or harmed in any fucking way by anybody, period, end. That is elevating into oneness consciousness. Okay. But the tricky part is, as we're becoming, how do we do that and not have judgment? Well, we heal the judgment. How do we do that and not be just passive and say nothing? I don't know how to address this without, like, making him feel attacked or coming across as superior. And I'm like, well, okay, so let's talk about this. If he is dehumanizing, which he is, if the objectification is there, which it is, if the lack of equality, the lack of honoring, et cetera, is here, which it is, what ways of oneness are missing in this scenario? What are the predominant ways of oneness? And in this example, the way of equality, the way of honoring, totally absent from this scenario and treating women this way, right? So when that's absent, it is my job to become the ways that are needed the most in this scenario. So I become the way of equality. I become the way of honoring. That's an energetic process. Okay. And as I become those ways, I then use language to address the person in front of me with the way of equality, with the way of honoring, because that's what's missing. He's missing it because he's treating her as an object, as a piece of trash, as a slut, as a side piece, as a whatever, right? So that's missing here. So that means, what's missing here? I need to become that for everybody involved. I need to elevate to those ways of oneness for everyone involved, because that's what's missing. And because I am a divine being, I am going to activate and become more powerfully, more elevated in those ways, because those are the ways that are missing from this scenario. And when I am the way of equality, and when I am the way of honoring, among the other ways as well, I can connect to this person as the way of connection. I can connect to this person from my divinity as the way of connection, as the way of equality, as the way of honoring. Think about this. Really let this sink in. He's not offering any of that shit. That's what's missing between him and these two women, because he has a girlfriend, he's cheating on one. But I can then become what's missing here, which means I treat him as the way of connection, as the way of equality, as the way of honoring. I don't treat him like, hey, you dirty fucking piece of shit. Like, you're actually the hoe here. You're the slut in all this. It's coming from the way of truth, coming from the way of equality, let all those ways of oneness come online in the way that you then discuss and talk about this. Hey, man, I really am the way of presence for you right now. I also, though, am the way of equality and the way of honoring and the way of harmlessness and gentleness. I am doing everything to transform into that as a divine being myself. And therefore, when I hear you showing up in a lack of honoring or equality or harmlessness and gentleness, for the woman you're talking about, it's not okay with me. And I say this with zero judgment. I say this with nothing but love. But there's two options here. And that is to either speak about this woman or women in general in a more elevated way when you talk about them. I'm not okay with dehumanizing and objectifying them. I'm not okay with it. I don't go along with that. Not anymore. Okay. So we can either speak about women in a very different way when we have conversations about women, or this type of conversation with me is just off of the table. I won't engage in it. And I say that with no judgment. I say that with nothing but honoring of you, unconditional love, harmlessness and gentleness with you, unconditional love for all involved, not just for you, not just for myself, for you, for the women. Like, that's how you start showing up in your relationships. So let's go deeper now and understand why men objectify to begin with. Why did they dehumanize to begin with? They're projecting onto women what they actually think of themselves. There's your deeper answer. They dehumanize themselves, which is why they then act out the process, the behaviors of dehumanization to women. They're projecting onto them what they actually think of themselves. You cannot be the way of honoring for yourself as a man in this world when you've grown up with this fucked up patriarchy that is nothing but abusive to men and women, just in different ways, that comes from separation consciousness, nothing even remotely close to what oneness consciousness is, how oneness consciousness expresses itself and lives and experiences life, as through each one of us as humans. Separation consciousness pits me against you, black and white, right, wrong, me or them. And that does nothing but create more dysfunction. It does nothing but create inequality. It does nothing but create hate, harm, lack of love. You can't possibly have love in the scenario when this shit is here. It creates objectification. Okay. So why do men objectify women? Which is again dehumanization, is because they've learned to dehumanize themselves. How? Well, you're taught from a very young age you're not even allowed to have real human emotions, or you're called, in the misogynistic ways that you're called sissies or bitches or little girls. You're crying like a little girl. Actually, you're crying like the human that you are, and that is a normal and very natural thing to do, or you wouldn't have the fucking ability to cry. Fucking fucktards. Come on. Stupid patriarchal bullshit brainwashing matrix that we were all trapped in for so long. Wake the fuck up and get out of that. Okay. Inside of each person is a divine soul. Everyone has it in there. That's the truth of what everyone is. That is the truth. The worst behaviors, the worst ways that you show up, the most horrible ways that you treat other human beings, men or women, right? The truth of what you are is deep down inside of that. That is nothing of who you really are. The truth of what you are, and all these shitty fucking behaviors, the way you dehumanize, the way you use, the way you objectify, the way you manipulate, the way you lie to, the way you cheat on, right? That isn't the truth of who anybody is, no matter how terribly they're showing up in this world. They are actually a divine infinite being having a human experience. And when you can see the truth about that within yourself, because this is key. And this, of course, is a process to get here of of learning, of healing, 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 and elevating, elevating, elevating. The process of becoming the universal ways of oneness, the process of becoming a being that lives and functions as oneness consciousness itself in human form. Okay. When you can see yourself through healing, elevating, becoming, that the truth of what you are as an individual, then you can see the truth of what others are. That's a beauty. That's oneness consciousness. It is an organic byproduct of becoming oneness consciousness, is that you don't exclude others anymore or yourself. So you are becoming the being of oneness consciousness. That means you are becoming the way of truth, for example, the way of connection. You connect to your own soul, you connect to divinity directly before you ever connect to any other being. When I am connected to my divinity, when I become the way of truth, when I become the way of trust, when I become the way of harmlessness and gentleness, the way of equality, the way of unconditional love, for example, the way of honoring, the way of integrity, when I become these ways for me, myself, and I, then it isn't even possible to show up as anything less for any other human being on this planet, because we are one. I can't possibly lie and cheat on you when I am the way of truth from myself. There's no such thing. You're not the way of truth over here, but not the way of truth over there. That doesn't, you're not the way of truth. That's not the enlightened definition. You are not in oneness consciousness yet. Just because sometimes you tell the truth, sometimes you lie, doesn't mean you are the way of truth. Sometimes you lie, sometimes you tell the truth means you're in separation fucking consciousness. You lack divinity, period, end. You're not there yet. That's not a judgment. That's not a criticism. That's the truth. See the difference? When you can look in the mirror and you can actually feel, as an energetic expression of you, the divinity that you are. You can feel your infinite self. You can feel your holy self, so to speak. You can feel your light, capital L, your light, the truth of what you are on an energetic basis. You can feel it. You can feel that divine energy. Oh, it's incredible. When you can feel that and you are becoming, how do you feel that? Well, you become each and every way of oneness. Each and every way of oneness has a slightly different vibrational frequency that you can feel flow through you. Why do they show up as different vibrational frequencies as oneness consciousness? Well, they show up as slightly different vibrational frequencies because we're in human form, and while we're here to experience all sorts of varying emotions. So those varying emotions for our human experience show up as the expression of the way of compassion, for example, the way of honoring, what that feels like. We're here to experience varying emotions. So when we are in our enlightened states of being, we are becoming the enlightened ones that we can become in this lifetime. We feel the difference on an energetic level. We feel the difference of every universal way of oneness, what it feels like to be the way of trust, the way of truth. Makes sense? So if I am becoming the ways of oneness, that means I'm becoming them for myself. As an organic byproduct of that, of course, I'm becoming them for everybody else. It's all one and the same. So when I focus on giving that to myself, so if I am a man, for example, and I focus on giving this to myself, becoming the ways of oneness, then I wake up to the truth, to the fact that I actually dehumanize myself. How do I do that? First of all, I suppress my emotions. Humans are here to experience emotions, for the love of fucking Christ. It has nothing to do with your goddamn gender. That is the human experience. You're here to feel emotions. Every human being has a plethora of emotions that they will feel and experience and move through while they are alive on this planet. Every goddamn human being. So guess what? You start with no longer dehumanizing yourself. You learn how to connect to your emotions, how to process them, how to love them, how to bring nurturing to them, how to become the way of compassion, the way of harmlessness and gentleness, the way of unconditional love for your own emotions. You get on a path of no longer objectifying, dehumanizing yourself, and then you won't project that onto other human beings, onto animals, onto any being on this planet. It isn't possible to become the ways you actually are functioning as the ways of oneness, and then you just suddenly turn it off somewhere else. You are not functioning in oneness consciousness if you do that. That isn't what it means to become the universal ways of oneness. Okay? It's no different than saying, oh, hey, us white people over here, we are so good to other white people. We're so loving to white people. I mean, we are just, every white person we come across is a brother or a sister. But we fucking hate black people. That doesn't even make any fucking sense. So no, you're not. I am the way of unconditional love. I love all white people. And same thing for any person of color. We like our own kind. You're fucking living in separation consciousness, you bunch of fucktards. All humans on the planet who function that way, bunch of fucktards living in separation consciousness. You're nothing but brainwash. You're low level of consciousness. It's not a goddamn criticism. It's the truth. So wake the fuck up and knock that shit off. We don't need to be that way with one another. Let's wake up here for real. You are not the way of unconditional love. You are not the way of harmlessness and gentleness. You are not the way of compassion. You are not the way of presence. Well, for this group of people, but not for that group of people. Well, for women only or for men only, but not for. Get out of here. If you truly connected to your own divinity and actually moved through energetically what it means to truly become the way of unconditional love, and you had the way of unconditional love for yourself as a being, for yourself. You had the way of compassion for yourself as a being. Something terrible happens in life and you're devastated by it. You're crying, you're upset, you're in emotional pain, and you brought nothing but the way of compassion to yourself for yourself. When you have that ability, when you gain that ability for yourself and you are becoming the way of compassion, for example, that means you then have the way of compassion for other human beings because we're all one. This is oneness. So once you achieve the vibrational frequency, the becoming of the way of compassion, you then automatically, do you understand that is the essence of what you are, which means you take you with you wherever you go. In every interaction, you are then the way of compassion. When you stop dehumanizing yourself as somebody that, as a man, for example, you're dehumanizing yourself. You're treating yourself as an object that doesn't feel like you're a robot that doesn't have emotions. Get the fuck out of here. And then what do? Because that's the trap you're in, because that's the paradigm you grew up in. That's the matrix you're fucking trapped in, the level of consciousness you're trapped in. You then will go to all lengths, any lengths possible to like justify it, defend it, because you're trying to defend and cover up your lack of ability to powerfully go into your own emotions and just feel them and process them and nurture them and love them and give yourself support when you're in emotional pain. You have the low emotional IQ that you can't do that. You haven't learned that. Our society doesn't allow you to do that. Right? So because of that, you treat your own self like an object, like a human who doesn't feel. That is objectifying yourself. That's dehumanizing yourself. So when you dehumanize yourself, you are then going to project what you are onto other people. And it's going to show up in any way, in 100 ways, in 7 different ways. So objectifying women in our society, because we live in a lack of equality, that's the patriarchal, third dimensional old world, what I call the old world, right? That is how we project onto others. It's really a reflection of what we think of ourselves, how we feel about ourselves. I am running a program of dehumanization. That energetic program flowing through me because I dehumanize myself. I don't acknowledge myself as a divine being having a human experience here to feel sadness and grief and fear and disappointment and insecurity. And I don't know how to process those things because the old world taught me that I'm not human. The old world taught me I'm not worthy enough to be loved and nurtured during these moments. I'm supposed to suppress it and be stoic instead. I'm not allowed to have feelings, right? And this is just one example. I'm making this very simple, as simple as I can. It can be a lot more complicated than this. I'm trying to keep it simple by staying with just a couple of examples so that you can get it. So, when I have learned how to run the programs of dehumanization, which of course most men are completely unaware of, it's in your blind spot, you then outwardly project onto others, aka women mostly, how you actually feel about yourself and how you actually treat yourself. You project that onto women. So as you heal and you learn what that means and you learn how you're actually dehumanizing your own self over and over and over again, it's like, whoa, I can expand. I can drop into my heart. I can learn to process emotions. I can alchemize my own emotional pain. I can become the way of responsibility, which it means this is how I'm going to now live my life and treat myself. I take 100% accountability for how I feel, what programs I'm running, how I'm triggered, and I can see it. I can own it. I can heal it. I can process it. I'm human. I have normal human emotions like every other goddamn human on the planet. Again, gender means nothing when it comes to this. We're all human. I can take accountability and responsibility for my own emotional state of being, which means I can stop dehumanizing myself and stop running that program by saying, I shouldn't feel this way because men don't feel these things. You're dehumanizing yourself. There's no fucking way you can run that program and do that to yourself and then not objectify and dehumanize another group of people. No way. It's impossible. Learn energy. Energy doesn't work that way. When you run an energetic program of dehumanization, you're going to act out that program in whatever way or ways. That's how energy works. Energy never dies. You have to alchemize and transform the program of dehumanization, which means you will no longer objectify and dehumanize yourself, which means you then, because that program's alchemized, you will no longer objectify and dehumanize anybody else on the planet. Now you're starting to elevate and live as divine being of oneness consciousness. By the way, if you haven't already, make sure you like, subscribe. Don't miss out on any other episode. Get the notices for them. So let this sink in a little bit. When we hear things like the teachings of everybody's a mirror, that doesn't mean that it is black and white. That's often the misteaching and also the misunderstanding of what it means that everybody in the world is a mirror for you. That, well, it is black and white. Whatever that person is doing is 100% what I do. No, it isn't. That's not. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's a direct mirror like that, black and white. Whatever that person is doing, you 100% do that too. Sometimes, a small percentage of the time or a percentage of the time, that is the case. There's all different kinds of mirrors out there to try to show us how we're behaving, what we're doing, what programs we're actually running. And a lot of times we don't realize the very way that we behave and treat others is actually how we feel and what we think about ourselves. So if I, as a man, actually deep down in my inner child wounding, if my wounds, my inner child actually thinks I am a piece of shit, I'm weak, I'm pathetic, I'm the weak one, I'm the inferior one, I'm not worthy, I'm unlovable. If I carry wounds like this, I will project those wounds onto other people. And especially, like if I'm a heterosexual man, I will especially project that on to women. And then even more so, if I am in a relationship with a woman, of course, all that's going to come out in the relationship. All the programs you run, all the wounds that you have that are unhealed, every aspect of your inner child is going to get triggered and activated, and it's going to come to the surface when you're in a relationship. So, objectifying your partner, objectifying somebody that you're dating, objectifying a woman or women that you're sleeping with, that lack of honoring, you don't honor yourself. If you honored yourself, you would never in your fucking life treat another human that way. That is the vibrational frequency of the way of honoring. When you actually achieve that level of enlightenment, you cannot dishonor another person when you are somebody that vibrates at the frequency of the way of honoring itself, of the way of equality itself, of the way of harmlessness and gentleness itself. If I am harmlessness and gentleness with myself, for myself, I am also that for all beings on this planet, period, fucking end. It doesn't matter if it's a bunny. It doesn't matter if it's a dog. It doesn't matter if it's a goddamn tree, for Christ's sake. And it certainly doesn't matter if it's another woman or a man. If I am the way of equality, I am the way of equality. I am the way of equality. If I am the way of honoring for myself, I am the way of honoring for you. I am the way of honoring for all beings because I am the way of honoring. That's just what I am. And therefore, the essence of what I am is what flows out of me in what I think, in how I feel, in my behavior, in my speech, in how I act. Do you understand? And when I am these things for myself, I can see the truth of those things in you. I now see with divine sight. I can see that inside of you, even when you don't see that inside of yourself, even when you don't acknowledge it inside of yourself, or in some superficial way on social media with some fucking meme or with some, affirmation that you say. You don't see it, capital S, divine sight. Or you wouldn't show up the way you show up. You don't acknowledge that as yourself, for yourself, as the being that you are, or you would never treat another being that way. No divine being treats another being as a fucking object or as less than them. You don't have the capacity or the ability to show up that way when you are actually elevated into the ways of oneness themselves, because that's who you are at your core, the truth of what you are. You can't harm another person when you become and live in human form as the truth of what you are, as each and every way of oneness. You can't do it. You don't have the ability. You don't have the capacity. So unless and until men stop objectifying themselves, stop dehumanizing themselves, stop looking at themselves, thinking of themselves as nothing but fucking objects, as beings that don't deserve to be anything but a fucking object, something that you fucking discard. That is what you think of yourselves, which is why you behave the way that you behave. How you feel about yourself is the way you conduct yourself in this world. And when that stuff is in our blind spot, we often condemn other people for things because we're trying to hide or mask what we really are ourselves. Great example of that are extreme religious people, priests who rape children. They'll preach all day long about abstinence and holiness and don't go anywhere. Sex is bad. Bleh. And look at what they're doing behind the scenes, some of them. We condemn others for what we ourselves are. It's a condemnation that we act out sometimes because we're so ashamed of what we are. We're trying to hide it from other people. Humans are really funny in these ways. Unconscious humans, unawakened humans behave this way. Divine humans do not. Don't let your ego grab that and categorize one group of people as superior. That's a trick. It's a trap coming from separation consciousness. See it. Catch yourself doing it. So, men, as you evolve, as you heal, and you stop, when you do the work, the real work, this really deep work, and you start bringing all the blind spots, all the programs and wounds in your blind spots, and you start bringing them to the forefront, you see them for what they are, right? You can see the truth in 9 times out of 10. The only reason you objectify another is because you actually think of yourself that way. You don't honor yourself at all, or you wouldn't dishonor another human being. You don't hold yourself at the vibrational frequency of the wave equality. You don't think you deserve. You actually mask with superiority programs because of how inferior you feel to the opposite sex. That's why you try to dominate and control and make subservient. That shows your inferiority programs. On the surface, it's superiority, but deeply wounded, you are in inferiority, which is why you try to dominate and control and enslave the very thing that you claim to be inferior to you. It shows how little you think of yourself. It shows the lack of divinity and love and compassion and harmlessness and gentleness you have for you, which is why you project it onto others. If you valued yourself, you couldn't ever not value another. Let me say that again. If you actually valued yourself and held yourself in the truth that you are a divine being, if you actually valued yourself, it wouldn't be possible to devalue another. It's not even possible. The only reason you devalue, dishonor, disrespect, dehumanize others is because that's the truth of what you think about yourself. You devalue yourself. So you don't want to feel the pain of that emotionally, so you then project that onto others. When you can heal judgment, that really starts to dissolve very deeply separation consciousness. I get asked sometimes how I can be a woman and have so many male clients who have done a lot of horrific things, okay, including rape, including abuse, including beating women up, paying for prostitutes, cheating on their wives with prostitutes, you name it, okay. And I've had a lot of clientele over the last couple of decades where Um, and I get asked this question, how the fuck can you deal with men who fucking harm women like that? How do you do it? Like, I don't understand how you can do it. Because I walk my talk. Everything that I teach and guide others and what to become and how to become that, I've already become myself. Okay. And that means that I hold people accountable. Every one of my clients, we're going to speak the truth here. I am the wave truth. I don't bullshit. I don't sugarcoat. We don't make excuses. We don't justify. We don't minimize. I don't do that. But I also come with zero judgment. I'm not here to judge you. I'm not superior to you. I might be in a different grade, which is why I'm here offering myself as a teacher. Do you understand? But that doesn't make me superior. There's a difference. This is oneness consciousness. See? So when I'm asked that question, I don't have a right. As a divine being, I can't judge another being. I don't have the judgment. But I also, as a divine being, simultaneously have zero tolerance. That's why people diving into this work transform so miraculously when they're willing to do the work. Because having zero tolerance policy means I am recognizing the divinity within myself that has a zero tolerance policy for treating myself and any other being on this planet in those ways, in the ways of objectification or dehumanization, for example. I learn to evolve out of treating myself this way, which makes it completely impossible for me to treat any other being that way. Isn't that the beautiful byproduct of this work? So I hope you understand more deeply how the programs of objectification, dehumanization, any of our programs work, how they function. And in order to stop doing that to other people, we have to wake up to the deeper wounds and programs that allow us to treat our own selves this way. Because it's just a projection. How we treat others is just a projection of what we actually think of ourselves. And I hope that hits home. I judge you because I judge myself. I criticize you because I actually criticize myself. I think I'm the piece of shit, which is why I'm going to treat you like the piece of shit. You see it? I dehumanize you because I dehumanize myself. These are just projections. All of them, the programs we run, are nothing but projections. I feel insecure within myself. So I'm either going to try to make you feel insecure, or I'm going to show up in a very certain way in front of you with a mask on so that I can get your validation. That's still a projection of my own insecurity. My lack of validation of myself is why I need validation from you. My lack of honoring, my dishonoring of myself is why I dishonor you. My lack of equality, I don't believe I'm equal to divinity, which is why I project inequality onto you and make you inferior to me. Why? Because I think I'm inferior to divinity. I don't acknowledge my own divinity. I don't function as the way of equality with divinity because I'm not divinity. I'm not divine. I'm less than that. So now I need to make you less than that, which is why I play superior and I make you inferior. And that is the lack of equality. That is inequality. I run those programs of inequality with you because I don't believe I'm worthy of divinity itself. I don't acknowledge myself as a divine being. I am inferior to divinity. And because inferior makes me feel so inferior, insecure, less than, in scarcity and lack, I'm going to project that onto you by making you subservient, you not equal. I'm going to dehumanize you over there. I'm acting out what I believe about myself compared to divinity because I've learned from separation consciousness that divinity is outside of me and I'm not worthy of it. I am less than that. I'm a child. Except none of that is the truth. So when you become the way of truth and you heal all this nonsense, you heal the way that you show up behaviorally and what you project onto others. I invite you to go to mastersofselfuniversity.com and get a free consultation about our groups and our classes that we can guide you through the evolution of all of this, alchemizing all of it along the way, connecting to your own divine power, becoming the truth of what you are. You don't flip a switch and turn all these programs off. You don't fucking write them down and burn them in a goddamn fire. And then suddenly that's not how you show up in the world anymore. That isn't how it works. Grow up. All that nonsense out there, I don't say that with judgment. I'm saying it because you're wasting your time and money on 900 fucking modalities out there when everything you need is right here inside of yourself. You just don't have the right level of spiritual, mystical education to guide you to connect to it on an energetic level. You're not learning the right methods for the most part. You have to be willing to learn what it takes to alchemize and transform this stuff, clear it out of the way so the divine you can come online. You can move through the becoming of each and every way of oneness so that you can stop treating yourself like this, which means you'll stop treating everybody else like that, or certain groups of people that you're selective with treating like this. We like to put people in categories, separate ourselves in that way. Isn't that crazy? So I invite you to step on the path of becoming oneness consciousness. Visit mastersofselfuniversity.com, get a free consultation, join our groups, join our classes, explore more. It's free, for crying out loud. What do you have to lose? Thank you for listening, as always. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share this with everybody you know, please. Somebody who needs to hear this message, somebody who this can reach and touch at a soul level. I send all the blessings to you as a reminder that you are the blessing. You just need to wake up to it. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you on the flip side.